At our wedding rehearsal, I was standing at the altar with the man I believed I would spend my life with. The music was playing softly, family and friends were smiling, and I felt a rush of nerves and excitement. Then my maid of honor, Chloe, froze in the middle of walking toward me. She stepped closer, grabbed my hand, and whispered, "You can't marry him." I tried to smile, thinking she was just nervous or making a bad joke, but her grip tightened. Her eyes didn't have a trace of humor in them. Without a word, she pulled out her phone, opened something, and turned the screen toward me. The moment I saw it, my heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I stood there in my white dress rehearsal gown, surrounded by people, but suddenly it felt like I was the only one in the room. My name is Julia Bennett. I'm 29, and I've been dreaming about this wedding since I was a teenager. I met Daniel Carter 4 years ago at a friend's barbecue, and from the moment he offered me a plate of grilled corn with that easy smile of his, I was drawn to him. He was smart, charming, and knew how to make me feel special. My parents loved him. My younger brother got along with him, and my friends said we were the perfect match. Planning the wedding had been stressful but exciting. My mom, Patricia, helped with the flowers and decorations. My brother Evan handled the music playlist, and Chloe, my best friend since childhood, was there for every fitting and tasting. I trusted Daniel completely. He worked long hours as a marketing consultant, but I never questioned his late nights. I believed every word he said. That day at the church was supposed to be a celebration. The soft yellow light poured through the stained glass, filling the room with warmth. My family filled the first few pews, chatting and laughing. The smell of fresh flowers filled the air. Daniel stood at the altar looking at me like I was the only person in the world. And then Chloe stopped everything with 6 words that made my skin go cold. I didn't know yet that the next few minutes would change everything I thought I knew about the man I loved. Chloe didn't let go of my hand. She just stood there, eyes locked on mine, as if she was silently begging me to take her seriously. My smile faded, and a strange heaviness settled in my chest. I looked down at her phone, confused, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The screen showed a series of text messages. At first, I only caught pieces. Daniel's name in the contact list, and lines of messages that made my stomach turn. Words like, "I miss you," "Can't wait to see you," and "We'll figure out the wedding later." The worst part was that these weren't old. The dates were just a few days ago. My eyes scanned the conversation, my brain trying to reject every word. I forced myself to read more, hoping I was misunderstanding. Then I saw it. "You know you're the one I really want. I'm only going through with this for now." My breath caught in my throat. That message had been sent at 11 p.m. last Thursday, the same night Daniel told me he had to stay late at the office for an emergency project. I felt the blood drain from my face. My heart was pounding so hard that I could barely hear the music playing in the church. Chloe's voice was low but steady when she said, "It's real, Julia. The woman he's been texting is someone I went to college with. She didn't know you were engaged until she saw your announcement online. She reached out to me last night. I didn't know how to tell you, but I couldn't let you walk into this blind. For a moment, I couldn't move. The laughter of our families, the clinking of glasses, the shuffle of people finding their places, all of it felt far away, like I was watching from behind a sheet of glass. I kept telling myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe it was an old conversation. Maybe it was a joke taken out of context. Maybe it was someone pretending to be him. My mind clung to anything that would make this not be true. I whispered, "Are you sure?" My voice cracked, and I could feel the sting of tears building, but I refused to let them fall in front of everyone. Chloe nodded slowly. "I've seen enough to know. And Julia, she's willing to talk to you. She feels awful and says she didn't know you existed until recently." I glanced toward the altar where Daniel stood, casually chatting with my brother Evan. completely unaware that I was a few feet away, seeing my entire future unravel. My stomach twisted as I thought about the moments we'd shared, how he proposed to me at the botanical gardens, how we picked out our first apartment, how we stayed up late painting the living room together. Were all those moments real to him, or just part of a role he was playing? The church suddenly felt too warm. The air felt heavy and suffocating. I wanted to run outside, gulp fresh air, and scream until my throat burned. But I stayed frozen, my feet rooted to the spot. Every time I looked at Daniel, all I could see were those words on Chloe's phone. "You're the one I really want." I knew I couldn't react here, not in the middle of the rehearsal with both of our families watching. My mother was sitting in the front row, looking so proud and happy. Evan was grinning at something Daniel said. If I caused a scene, it would ruin everything in an instant. And maybe that's what needed to happen. But I wasn't ready to face that storm just yet. Chloe squeezed my hand. "Julia, we can step outside. You don't have to say anything to him right now, but you need to know the truth before tomorrow." I nodded, barely able to find my voice. I need to breathe." We slipped out a side door into the hallway, the sounds of the rehearsal fading behind us. My hands were shaking. I leaned against the wall, staring at the floor, trying to hold myself together. Chloe handed me her phone again so I could look at the messages more closely. I scrolled up, reading weeks' worth of conversations. They talked about meeting up when I was busy with wedding stuff, about how he couldn't wait for things to calm down so we could really be together. There was even a photo, him in a shirt I had bought him for his birthday, smiling into the camera, clearly not taken at work like he had claimed. With every word I read, the picture I had of Daniel cracked a little more. I wasn't just angry, I was humiliated. All the times I defended him when friends teased about his late nights, all the trust I had poured into this relationship, all the plans I had made, they all felt like a cruel joke. I looked at Chloe, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't even know who I'm marrying anymore." She put a hand on my shoulder and said softly, "Maybe you don't have to." That was the moment the reality started to sink in. This wasn't just a fight or a misunderstanding. This was betrayal, deep and deliberate. And now I had to decide what to do before I walked down that aisle. I stood in the narrow hallway of the church, my back pressed against the cool plaster wall, Chloe's phone still in my hand. The messages burned in my mind. I couldn't believe that just an hour ago I had been smiling, adjusting my dress, and practicing vows in my head. Now all I could think about was how those vows meant nothing to the man I was supposed to marry. My first instinct was to confront Daniel right there, to walk back into that room and shove the phone in his face. But the thought of doing it in front of my family, of watching my mother's expression shift from joy to confusion to heartbreak, made my stomach turn. I wasn't ready for that scene. Not yet. I needed answers before I blew my entire life apart. I handed Chloe her phone back and took a deep breath. "I need to talk to her," I said. Chloe knew exactly who I meant. "She's waiting for your call," she replied. She pulled up the contact and handed the phone to me again. I stepped farther down the hallway, away from the muffled sounds of music and laughter coming from the rehearsal. My hands were sweating as I tapped the call button. The phone rang twice before a woman's voice answered. "Hello?" She sounded cautious, as if she didn't know what kind of conversation she was walking into. "This is Julia," I said, my voice shaking. "Chloe's friend, Daniel's fiancé." There was a pause on the other end, and then she let out a slow breath. "Oh God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." I asked her to tell me everything. She said her name was Erin, that she had met Daniel almost a year ago through mutual friends. She had no idea he was engaged, let alone planning a wedding. He told her he was single and that he was ready for a serious relationship, but that work kept him busy. They had been meeting regularly, dinners, weekends away, whenever he claimed to be working late or traveling for business. She didn't find out about me until she saw a photo from my bridal shower that Chloe posted on social media. Each detail was another knife in my chest. Erin wasn't angry. She was hurt, embarrassed, and angry at herself for believing him. I swear, if I had known, I would have cut things off immediately, she said. When I confronted him about you, he told me you two weren't serious, that you were complicated. But then I saw your post announcing the wedding date. That's when I knew he was lying to both of us. I thanked her, though the words felt hollow. I hung up, my head spinning. Daniel hadn't just made a mistake. He had built a life on lies. He had stood in front of my family, looked my mother in the eye, and pretended to be the man I could trust. I turned back to Chloe, who was watching me closely. We need to leave, I said. I can't stay here pretending. She nodded and followed me out a side exit into the cool evening air. The crisp wind hit my face, snapping me out of the daze I had been in. We sat in her car for a few minutes in silence. I stared at my hands, the diamond on my ring finger catching the fading light. It no longer looked beautiful to me. It looked like a symbol of everything false. I don't know what I'm going to do, I admitted, but I know I'm not marrying him tomorrow. Saying the words out loud made them real. My heart ached, but somewhere beneath the pain was a spark of strength. We decided on a plan. I would go back into the church, finish the rehearsal without speaking to Danielle more than necessary, and leave as soon as possible. Tonight, I would pack my things from our shared apartment and stay with Chloe. Tomorrow, before the wedding guests arrived, I would tell my parents everything. They deserved to hear it from me, not in whispers from shocked relatives. I took one last deep breath before stepping back inside. Daniel spotted me from across the room and smiled like nothing was wrong. That smile, so easy, so practiced, made my skin crawl. I smiled back, a small, tight curve of my lips that hid the storm building inside me. For the rest of the rehearsal, I went through the motions. I walked when I was supposed to walk, stood where I was told, and repeated the lines the coordinator fed us. But my mind was elsewhere, already imagining the moment I would tell him exactly what I knew. Every time our eyes met, I wondered if he had any idea his double life was minutes away from crashing down. By the time the rehearsal ended, my decision was made. I wasn't going to be the woman who ignored the truth just to keep the illusion of a perfect life. Tomorrow would not be my wedding day. Tomorrow would be the day I took my life back. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. The apartment was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. My suitcase sat by the door, packed with every personal thing I could fit inside. I stared at the engagement ring on my hand one last time before sliding it off and placing it in my pocket. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry while handing it back. Chloe drove me to the venue, her jaw set, her hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than normal. "You don't have to do this face to face if you don't want to," she said softly. I shook my head. I need him to know that I know, and I need to see his reaction when everything falls apart. When we pulled up, the parking lot was already full. Guests were arriving early, chatting, hugging, taking photos. My parents stood near the entrance, greeting people. My mother looked so happy, so proud, that my chest tightened. I knew the moment I told her, that smile would vanish. Daniel was inside the bridal suite, supposedly waiting for me so we could take a few first look photos. Instead of slipping into the white dress hanging near the mirror, I walked straight toward the groom's room. The coordinator tried to stop me, asking if I needed help getting ready, but I kept moving. When I pushed open the door, Daniel was laughing with his groomsmen, a glass of champagne in his hand. He turned, his eyes lighting up when he saw me, until he noticed the expression on my face. "Julia," he said, setting the glass down. "What's wrong?" I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. "You tell me," I said, my voice steady. "Why don't you tell me about Aaron?" His face went pale. His friends shifted uncomfortably, exchanging nervous glances. "Who?" he asked, trying to sound confused. but his voice cracked. I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolling to the screenshots Chloe had sent me the night before. Messages, photos, hotel reservations, all time-stamped on the same nights he had told me he was working late. I held the phone out toward him. Her, the woman you've been seeing for almost a year, the one you told you were single. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. One of his groomsmen coughed and quickly stepped out, muttering something about giving us privacy. Daniel reached for the phone, but I pulled it back. "It's over," I said firmly. "There's no wedding. There's no us." He stepped forward, lowering his voice. "Julia, listen. It's not what it looks like. I can explain." "Explain what?" I cut in. "Explain how you lied to me, to my family, to my friends, how you let me plan a wedding while you were sneaking around with someone else." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration flashing across his face. "I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything." "A mistake?" I said, my voice rising. "You don't get to call it a mistake when you do it over and over for months. That's a choice." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was heavy, full of things that could never be unsaid. Finally, I took the ring from my pocket and tossed it onto the table. It landed with a sharp clink. "You can keep it. Maybe you can give it to your next fiancé." I turned to leave, but he reached for my arm. "Julia, please." I pulled back sharply. "Don't touch me." My voice was ice now. "You've already taken enough from me. You don't get to take my dignity too." When I stepped out of the room, the hallway was full of people pretending not to stare. Whispers followed me as I walked past them toward the exit. My mother caught sight of me and hurried over, her smile fading instantly. "Julia, what's going on?" I met her eyes, my throat tight. "I'll tell you everything, but not here." She searched my face for a long moment before nodding, sensing the weight of what I wasn't saying. Outside, the cold air hit me like a shock. Chloe was already waiting by the car, her expression a mix of concern and pride. "It's done," I said as I climbed in. She started the engine without asking for details. As we drove away, I glanced in the side mirror. The venue grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. And with it, so did the life I thought I was going to have. I didn't know what the future would look like, but I knew one thing for certain. I would never again ignore the truth, just to keep up the illusion of a perfect love. In the weeks that followed, the quiet in my apartment felt different. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. My phone would buzz with messages from people who had been at the wedding venue that day, all dancing around the same question. What happened? I didn't answer most of them. I wasn't ready to explain my pain to people who were only curious because it was gossip. The people who truly mattered, my parents, my brother, and Chloe, already knew. The night I walked out, we all sat in my living room, the half-packed suitcases still by the door. I told them everything, every message, every photo, every night Daniel had lied about where he was. My mom sat beside me, holding my hand so tightly, it almost hurt. My dad's jaw was clenched, his eyes cold with anger. Evan kept pacing the room, muttering that he'd like to have a word with Daniel. But it was Chloe who finally broke the silence. "Julia, you didn't just save yourself from marrying the wrong man. You saved yourself years of heartbreak you didn't deserve." Her words hit me harder than I expected, because deep down I knew she was right. The first few days were a blur. I deleted Daniel's number. I blocked him on social media. I threw out the framed photos of us that had been scattered around my apartment. Each step felt like ripping off a bandage, raw and stinging, but necessary. There was no point in holding on to pieces of a future that was never real. A week later, Daniel emailed me. The subject line read, "Please, just talk to me." I didn't open it. My therapist, someone I had started seeing just 2 days after the wedding disaster, told me that ignoring it wasn't weakness. It was strength. That email wasn't for me. It was for him, to make himself feel better. I didn't owe him closure. The hardest part was dealing with the flashbacks. I'd be walking through the grocery store and see a man who looked like him, and my stomach would drop. I'd hear a song we had picked for the wedding playlist and have to step outside to breathe. It was like my mind kept trying to remind me of what I had lost, forgetting that what I had lost was never mine to begin with. Slowly, I started filling my days with new things. Chloe dragged me to a pottery class, and even though my first bowl looked like something out of a child's art project, I kept going. I joined a local hiking group. I started cooking meals from scratch again instead of living on takeout and coffee. These weren't just distractions. They were ways of proving to myself that I could still find joy without him. One night, about a month after it all happened, I found myself scrolling through old messages between me and Daniel. Not the romantic ones, but the small, casual texts about what to pick up from the store or when he'd be home. I realized that even in those messages, there had been little cracks, short, evasive answers, sudden changes in plans. I had ignored them back then because I wanted so badly to believe I was happy. And that was the moment it truly hit me. The warning signs had been there. Chloe's phone didn't create the truth. It only revealed it. I had ignored my own instincts for too long. By spring, I had settled into a new rhythm. I went to family dinners without worrying about what Daniel might say or do. I laughed more easily. I stopped checking my phone in the middle of the night. I even started dating again, not seriously, but enough to remind myself that not every man is like him. The last time I saw Daniel was purely by accident. I was walking out of a coffee shop, and he was walking in. For a second, our eyes met. I thought I might feel a rush of anger, maybe even sadness, but instead, I felt nothing. He was just a man holding a coffee cup, no different from the dozens of others walking past me. That was when I knew I had finally let him go. Now, when I think back to my wedding rehearsal, I don't think about the ruined day or the embarrassment. I think about Chloe, how she stood there, risking our friendship, to tell me something I didn't want to hear but needed to know. I think about my family, who closed ranks around me without hesitation. And I think about myself, the woman who walked away from the wrong life, even when it would have been easier to stay and pretend. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. The truth may hurt, but lies will destroy you. It's better to face one moment of pain than live a lifetime in the shadow of someone else's deceit. And if someone you love ever grabs your hand and says, "You can't do this," trust that they're trying to save you, not ruin you. Because sometimes the person who loves you most is the one who's willing to break your heart just to protect it.